Welcome back to Old Guy REI. Mikey and I are back to discuss the highlights of our last Wednesday accountability call, which was for July 9th. And I thought it was a really good meeting. What did you think, Mikey?
I like the central concept that you had, that you just posted to the group and saying, what are the challenges that we've been through?
Yeah, I think that steered the meeting in a positive direction. I know over the last few weeks, it seemed like I mentioned we had gotten some feedback and some people were feeling like they didn't get an opportunity to be involved and share what they were going through. So this week, we specifically asked people if they would mind sharing um, learning lesson or a problem they were having. And as usual, a lot of people stepped up and they don't mind, sharing some of the ugly stuff that happens. And I think you had specifically said, and we don't hope or wish any bad stuff on any of our friends, but that it sometimes we learn more from hearing about problems or lessons that other people are having.
When I first watched Mark's channel, Financial Firefighter, he said his biggest mistake was not having reserves. So when I started, I made sure to have reserves set aside. And sure enough, down the line, it helped me and it saved me.
Yeah, we were in the same boat. I'm glad, and originally I think a few people, because we had shared that Cynthia especially likes us to have about 10,000 in reserves per door. And having 10 doors, that's quite a big amount. And some people thought, maybe you could knock it down to 50 and use the other 50 to buy something. But in our case, we ended up using most of that, over the last year or so. So I was really thankful that we had that much in reserves. And, some people might think, wow, you spent that much on your portfolio. You would have been better off, putting your money somewhere else. But I don't think that's the case. You and I also just talked about, even if the way I look at it, and it seemed like you felt the same way, if the property is even vacant and we're making the mortgage payment, that principal portion that we're paying in is almost like putting the money in the bank. At least that's what the way I see it. It's not a total loss, although you are losing some profit. The night started off with one of our friends talking about, actually, it was Lindsay talking about a learning lesson for her was that she underestimated property taxes and she invests in Gary and she's doing the BRRRR strategy on a few of her properties. And on the outside, it always looks like, well, it looks like a lot of people are having perfect experiences. But when you really dig into it, most of us aren't. And it's nice for them to share. So when she bought the property, of course, she was going to be paying taxes on her purchase price. And that meant the taxes would be higher and it ate into her profit margin a little bit, at least for now.
I made the same mistake. The first one I bought is going to get reassessed on the fourth year mark, and that's going to hit me hard. So I'm likely going to have to sell that one. And it's just a learning lesson. And now I know I'm probably not going to go in that area anymore just because of how high the school taxes are.
Yeah, from what you were explaining to me, it's not, I mean, we think of property taxes as one number, but in your area, there's several different categories and they add all those up for the final consequence, I guess. Um, you mentioned maybe needing to sell that property. We were kind of in that same situation. Well, we are in that situation right now where we realized property taxes were going up, and that was on the turnkey that we bought in Gary. Um, And with the amount that they're going up, it really will eat most of our cash flow up. It wasn't a really super profitable deal in the beginning, which I knew it was maybe a 3 or 4% cash on cash return. So my first thought was, should we sell it? And hopefully it's appreciated enough to where we wouldn't really lose that much and then move the money somewhere else. Um, but in contacting an agent in the market who's also a property manager, he felt that we might be able to get more rent than we're getting now, and that tenant is on their way out. So if we could increase the rents, I think I told you about $50 to $100 a month, that would kind of put us back in the same position we were in, and we'd be able to hang on to the property, which is what I would love to do. Um,
Yeah, that's the
and
power of networking. You were able to contact from another recommendation just to see what other options you have, and you had a good call, got great feedback, got other ideas for, hey, maybe we could challenge the assessment, or do you know there's these plans that are available? That was a good.
yeah, the plan that you're talking about. So this tenant is on her way out through eviction, actually, because she hasn't been or he or she, I don't recall, but they haven't been able to stay up on the rents. But in speaking with the new PM, he brought up a couple of programs because he's in that market, right? And a couple of programs that might be able to help with the rent because she is on a month-to-month lease, and even though she would get assistance, it doesn't mean that we wouldn't still move forward with the eviction because without assistance, she can't do it. So that was very helpful. And going into this week's meeting, we were just talking too about trying to be proactive in whatever situation you're in with your properties. If there is a situation and there's steps you need to take to better the situation, what's holding you back from at least taking the first step? So we're hoping that in this next meeting, we can help anyone going through any issues. It could be something super simple, like we've talked about. Maybe you need to set up utilities and you're out of state, so you think it's a big hassle. You just don't want to do it, but it's going to cost you in the end and only you. So we want to help people start moving forward and progressing each week, reaching their new goals, getting these things behind them. And like you and I have said before, doing it the first time, it may be super easy, might not be as involved as you think, but even if it is, you know what it's going to take. So it'll help you do it the next time if you have to. Um,
And we just had that conversation where we were having a small issue, both of us. Then we're letting our thoughts kind of ruminate. That wasn't really getting us anywhere. But then once we called, we reached out to our managers or whoever we're trying to reach out to, then they come back with an answer. It's like, oh, okay, now we understand, and now it's actually resolved a couple days later or a couple hours later. It makes a world of difference.
yeah, it's definitely better to take action. And some of the people had some pretty strange experiences, but going down the list, um, one of the people on the call was saying that he thought he was so he was reaching out to contractors for estimates on different projects around his home, his investment property, and he was thinking that when he presented himself through his LLC, that the estimates were higher than when he was just his regular person. And it doesn't matter. Um, like to me, I wouldn't ever give someone a different price just because they were in an LLC or not. But maybe some people see that as someone who should have money because they have an LLC for their property. Um, So that I thought that was interesting. There was another recommendation. You mentioned reserves, and Ray, one of our friends, was saying that he was so thankful that he had enough reserves because he was actually doing getting a property ready for short-term rental out of state. And one of his mistakes was underestimating the length of time the rehab would cost. So that's, I mean, holding costs are one thing that are going to eat up reserves, but then two, I think he even mentioned one contractor just left and never came back. So he had to fly out there and find a new contractor. And I think his total timeline doubled. He thought 6 months was conservative, but it ended up taking a year. And that's something we always try to impress on people, is just having enough money. And like I said earlier, in our case, we had the 100,000. If we had listened to other people and taken 50,000 to buy something, then we really would have been hurting because we only had 50,000 in the reserve account. Let's see who else was with us that night. So, just a funny story. Our friend Josh, they've been looking for a condo on the Gulf Coast for a while, and they've had one they've been watching for a few months and seeing price decreases for a while. So they were just waiting for the right moment. And something happened that took their attention away for a few days. And when they came back, the property was pending. So um, sometimes you can wait too long for that great deal, which it's a bummer, but there are going to be plenty of deals out there for them in the future, I'm sure. But he was kind of bummed about that.
I I relate to that a lot because there'll be times where I'm working and then I get the email notification and I look at the address and it's one of the properties I'm looking at too, and you just get that feeling of dread. You're like, oh,
Yeah.
I
You
should.
mean you mean you get the notification that it just went pending?
It's contingent. It's like not you. You're like, oh, I should
Yeah,
have went after that one harder or something.
you didn't get it. Um, I think one of the stranger stories that we heard that night was from a friend who has properties in Tennessee, and I think he has three or four in the same area, and he has a contractor rehabbing one of them, but they had a call that the plumbing was backed up. Apparently, a plumber went out, did sewer scopes, sent him the video showing blockages in the sewer lines, and nobody else had plumbing issues. So he asked the contractor to go across all the properties and check to see if there was any blockages. And I think he said one of them had a simple block, and they came to find out that the video they got from the plumber was a fake video from some other property. And that that brought up a lot of comments. Some were wondering if, because it was a plumber that the property management company had worked with for a long time, and if this issue ever came up, they were thinking maybe the property manager and the plumber are in cahoots, making side money by calling out fake repairs needed. And it made a lot of us wonder because most of us are out of state investors, and we feel like we found people we can trust, to manage and work on our properties. But I guess you never know until something like crazy like this happens.
This was one of the wildest stories I've heard throughout the history of the calls. We're really interested to hear the follow-up because this investor didn't told the story but hasn't followed up yet and is was thinking, what is my game plan? How do I communicate? Because this is outright theft.
Yeah.
So we're really interested to hear what that conversation is like. And it's good to know that that contractor that he had trusted and had been working with for a really long time was there at the property, and that contractor didn't know that. So
Yeah.
So for him to do the follow-up, the contractor he trusted and has been working with outside of the PM company, and he was able to verify that it was in fact clear, those lines. Wow.
Yeah, and just a couple of thoughts about how to help mitigate that in the future. We were thinking he could even ask the contractor that he trusts, next time if he's going to have sewer scopes done, to at least be there and make sure they're putting the camera down his line. And he doesn't have to say he's the man's contractor, or he could just say he's a friend, and the owner asked him to be there to kind of get an idea of what they had to do. I thought that was a great suggestion. Um, yeah, and it doesn't even have to be the contractor. It could be just another friend or something. Maybe somebody other than the property manager, just in case that was the issue. But so he might end up firing the PM if he finds out, that they knew about it. Um, One of the other folks on the call had mentioned one of his learning lessons was he basically had a deadline to rehab this property that he purchased so that he could refinance when it was done and pay the private money lender or hard money lender back when he was done. But the contractor took too long. And so our friend was scrambling to find some kind of bridge financing to get him through the rehab so he could refinance and pay them back. Um, so that was a big lesson for him. But the second part of his question was how what is the process like if you fire one contractor, say a general contractor, maybe that contractor pulled the permit and now you're going with a new contractor. What is the process to get all that switched over? And I shared I hadn't ever had that experience, but my first step would be to go to the planning department or the building department and ask them that question because they'll have all the answers for them there. And a lot of us in the group have to deal with property managers. So the next question was one of our friends was feeling like his property manager was kind of taking liberties and making decisions that he felt should have been made by him, the owner. And one of my thoughts about that was, for example, if you have a tenant that's behind on rent and your property manager keeps giving them extension dates to come up with the rent, that might knock you out or prolong an eviction if that's the way you want to go. So maybe you can give me your thoughts on that. I thought maybe the property manager didn't understand how the owner wanted things dealt with, for one, and they won't know unless you tell them, right? What do you think about that?
That is what Dion has said. And that was a realization for me in the course call. We were going through it with another investor. He was saying that the rents would be partially paid, but it would take some time, and I think it's still taking time just to catch up on the rents going on a couple months. So that
Yeah,
was good to hear.
yeah, and that's the thing, it's a little bit behind 1 month, and then it just kind of snowballs and to the point where they can't catch up. So I don't mean to sound heartless, but we can't pay for somebody to live in our properties. That's not what this is all about. And I mean, like Dion says too, if the tenant experiences some really bad life experience or life like a death or something in the family, you can be understanding, but you still have to stay on target for them being able to stay in the place.
Dana from Hemling had that great saying where when she sees the rents and some are partially paid, she was saying essentially you become a debt collector and you're always chasing that person because once they get caught up, they're caught up late, so you're always chasing them for the next one because they're still going to be behind for the next month. And how Dion says you just have to treat all your tenants equally. So you're saying I do this for all my tenants. I can't treat you differently and treat another tenant another way. It's from a legal perspective, it's not going to work out for me. So that was good that he told us that too.
Yeah, she always brings a lot of great value and tips to everyone when she joins him on his calls. Let's see who else. Speaking of evictions, one of our friends in Milwaukee who self-manages was going through an eviction process and mentioned that he missed a deadline in the process. And because of that, he had to start the process all over again. And that's kind of what I was talking about with the property managers. And that's why I'm right now digging in with all of our property managers to understand the process so that I can keep track of what's supposed to be happening on a certain date. Because if you miss a date and they have to start all over again, it could be another month or two before you can get the tenant out. And that's what he experienced. He had to restart the process because he missed a court date. And and it's different from state to state or whatever, town to town, but that's important. And if your property managers can't keep that under control and stay on task, then probably need to think about replacing them too. Property management seems to be a hot topic on a lot of our meetings. Next, there was one, Cody actually was wondering for a while if he should replace his property manager. He said they were decent overall, but there was a few things that he didn't like. And I think that's one of our fears all the time is what if we hire someone that's worse than the person they're replacing? So I think he was lucky because he has a portfolio, I would think about 18 units. So he was able to place half of them with one PM and keep the original PM doing what they were doing. And he was be able to compare the two and see, because I would think, maybe the new PM is good at some things that bugged him about the original, but they might be worse at things that the other one does well. So at least he's able to compare. He might, and if they're both decent, maybe he'll leave them in place. If not, he might feel comfortable putting all of his properties under one. Most of us don't have that luxury because, well, for us, I think the most one PM has is 3 properties. Everybody else just has one. So we don't have our portfolio all in the same city. I think you mentioned, have you fired a PM before?
I have, and that was going through my first one. To me, it felt like there were a lot of repair charges, and it was a little frustrating just seeing constant repairs popping up and up, especially when I thought it was a turnkey purchase. But now looking back, I think it was a lot of my mistakes and my misunderstandings. I could have done a better job researching and being better prepared to manage the manager. And just having this experience now with the second property manager, I can compare the two. And I think it was a tenant placement issue on the first one, but the second property manager, I think they did a better job placing the tenant and me validating that. And now that's probably one of the better tenants I have.
Yeah, I think was the property manager that you fired, because you told me a story before about how you had done your research on like your rent box and you came up with what you thought was a good rent to advertise the property at, but they placed a tenant at a lower rent. Is that the one you let go?
No, this is the current one.
The new one.
That was during the winter. So the manager had said, let's go low so we can get a tenant in soon, then we can raise the rents from there.
Okay.
But so far they've been solid.
Okay. After that experience has gotten better.
Mhm.
Um, Someone else in the group who self-manages up in Washington State was mentioning that they have a tenant that always pays late, but always pays. And he thinks he wants to get that tenant out, but right now he's wanting to refinance the loan on that property, so he needs the rent to help qualify for the refinance. So that's a little bit tough, but once he gets the refinance done, then maybe he can make a decision on if he still wants the tenant out or not. What do you think about that? A tenant pays late consistently, but you always get the rent by the end of the month.
Always pays late. I'm so the Dion's response would be different from me. He would say he would serve the eviction the day that they're late, saying there's programs available that can help you. And there's also Dana saying you become a debt collector. But if they're always paying that month in full, on top of the late payments and the late fees, I think that's like extra cash. So I'm okay if they pay it in full on top of the late fees, but I don't know how you look at it.
Yeah, I would be uncomfortable that they were paying late because and not that well, hopefully our business is running well enough so that that doesn't affect when we pay the mortgage, right? Hopefully you got enough reserves and everything kind of catches up as it goes along. But they were also saying that a late fee, ours are usually about $50. Sometimes the tenants don't care. It's just $50 to them and they're okay paying that plus the rent. Um, I think it would still bother me that because I just wonder why can't you pay your bills on time, right? We all have to pay our bills on time or suffer the consequences. And two people have said maybe it's the areas that our rentals are in and the kind of tenants we get there. So we have to understand that too. But I think as long as I was getting it along, like you said, along with the late fee, then I would be okay. But
Yeah,
like Dion says, I mean, if they don't pay till the end of the month and then the next month's rent's already due, it's just like their calendar is off by 30 days.
I forget if it was Dion or Matt, but they're saying they would use that to evaluate as an evaluation to renew the lease.
Hmm.
And I like that if you just keep track of it and saying when it's time to decide to renew or not, saying, we've been tracking and you've been late out of the 12 months, maybe, I don't
Right.
know. Yeah, you could use that as an evaluation tool. So I like how either Matt or Dion said that as negotiation.
Yeah, that's a good point too. And I think a lot of times too, just say the tenant's been in there for a while and maybe you bought it and rents are a little bit low. The best outcome would be if the tenant did leave, because then you fix it up and get market rents or close to market rents. And that could be quite a bit more cash flow in your pocket. Let's see. One kind of crazy comment for the night was someone asked, what did we think would need to happen with the economy or maybe in the world for us to see 0% interest rates again, like we did in, was it 2020? Um, I personally wouldn't want to see something because I think it would have to be super drastic to the world to get us back down there again. But a lot of people had some interesting points of view on that. What did you think?
I agree. I think that what that 2-3% rates that some people have, that's generational rate. I just smile whenever I hear homeowners. I just ask them, "Hey, what rate do you have?" They're like, "Oh, 2.7, 3%." I just smile because that's such a great asset to have.
Yeah, and you and I had too have had discussions, and a lot of people in the group about because we have loans in, probably from 7 to 7.5 right now, and like a lot of our friends were able to do back then to refinance their loans to get those good rates, and it really created a lot of cash flow and a lot of wealth. I think if rates did go down to where we can get a percent or maybe 1.5% lower than where we're at now, we would certainly do that. And it would help kind of replace a lot of the money that we didn't expect to put out in the first few years. It would help build that back up again. And we're pretty close to retirement age, at least Cynthia and I. So the cash flow would be something that would help us a lot in being able to retire at all. So you have 4 properties now. What is the range of your interest rates?
It is in the sixes and sevens right now too.
Okay, so you're about where we are. And I've said before or shared before too that when we just started getting into buying real estate again in 2021, rates were starting to come back up, and I thought, we missed the boat and maybe we shouldn't do it, but we got one loan in at 4 and one at 4.75, and now that looks pretty good, right? So, eh, like they say, I mean, just because rates are where they're at doesn't mean you can't find a cash flowing deal, a good deal. And then I think a lot of us that are in buying mode don't want rates to go down right now because that would just create a totally different market. There would be a lot of competition. But if you get one now at, 7 and they do drop in the future, it could be turning into a base hit or a home run after a couple of years.
It goes good with you had the talk with Dion, you had your live stream. That was really good because we were talking about maybe beating ourselves up about how things are going. But Dion is really good at taking a step back, looking at the larger picture because he's seen it from beginning to end. And it's always a good reminder to have that the ninth, 10th year, that's when the hockey stick growth really happens. So while you're holding over that period, it's great just sticking with it. And on that, but we do joke as like, why do they call it the 5 years of suck? Maybe they should change it. But if they did, you don't know how much people would stick around in that case.
Yeah, yeah, you're right. We're trying to show people that real estate can be life changing, for the better. And when sometimes we worry if we're sharing all of our challenges or our lessons that it might deter a lot of people. But like our friends that have succeeded and are retired now, um, I think it is worth it, and I can see the benefit. I know, like we joked about how we were just talking about all the bad stuff last week and feeling, I don't know, maybe feeling sorry for myself or something. But after we get to a chance to talk to an investor that's made it through all that stuff, and it really is true because I've seen it. We've gone through some challenges one year, and then a year later, you're like, why was I so freaked out about that? But with experience, comes and the education, you're able to realize how many more options we have. And like you mentioned earlier, I think trying to come at each problem more level headed instead of panicking right off the bat is certainly helpful because there usually is a way to get through it without losing your shirt.
I just see the rent check. I remember the first experience with the first rent check compared to me working overtime. and I saw how similar that was, I much rather get that rent check than having to put in 8 hours of overtime. Yeah.
Yeah, that's a pretty amazing feeling when you finally do start getting those checks. It's definitely great. Um, well, we'll look forward to this next meeting, and hopefully being able to help some people stay moving forward.
And a lot of congratulations in order. Zuber just hit 70,000 subscribers on his channel. Dion just finished his book. I hope the pre-order comes out soon so we can start ordering those.
Mhm.
And Mark, he is offering for school members who are interested in becoming the first-time school member, they can reach out to him, subscribe to his channel, and then they'll get their first month free. And it's so much value, it's so worth it.
Yeah, I think there are still some of those offers available. I know a few people have taken advantage of it, but you're right. So you need to sign up for school. You would pay for that month, and then Mark will reimburse you for the first month. So that was really generous. And I know you're involved in that, and I think Charles and his wife are involved in that as well. Is that
Yep.
what Zuber was saying? Yeah. And yeah, that's really nice. I think hopefully people will take advantage of that, because then you can decide if it's for you or not. But we're trying to be more involved in there. Um, you ask a question in there, and what is there now? Close to 400, or did he pass 400 now?
Being passed.
Yeah, there's 400 other people in there that can give you suggestions and help with whatever situation you're going through. So, okay, well, I guess that'll be it for this week. Again, thank you so much, and we'll see you next after the next meeting.
Thanks, Frank. Looking forward to it.
Thank you.